The Tennessee Volunteers and Mississippi State get set to do battle at Neyland Stadium. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Volunteers and the Bulldogs. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at RHOBACK. Go to RHOBACK.com. Use promo code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. That's RHOBACK.com. Promo code SECU to get 20% off today. Tennessee and Mississippi State get set to do battle on Saturday night in Knoxville. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friend Dave Shumate joins me once again. Shu, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Excited to break down this matchup with you.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's got two very winnable games. If you're going back to Kentucky last week, had some ups and downs, obviously. I thought Nico took that next step. I thought he kind of took a next step, maybe not the next step. Maybe I initially turned that wrong. But you saw some positives. Again, though, if it's not Nico, it's Chris Brazzell dropping a ball. I mean, granted, tougher catch you probably give him credit for, but you got to help out a struggling quarterback there if you're a receiver. Outside of Brew McCoy, they really don't have anybody they can trust right now on the outside. Dylan Samson continues to do his thing. It's just that inconsistency on offense. The defense, again, holding another SEC team under 20. Was it probably their best night? No. I think Rodney Garner, Tim Banks will tell you, yeah, Kentucky probably had a little bit more success on the ground than we would have liked. And also from what a lot of other teams had against them throughout the rest of the year. Better offense as well. But you still only give up 18 points to a conference opponent. How mad can you be? The defense is definitely championship level caliber, championship level worthy. For Tennessee, though, how do we – the offense has to start clicking. We talked about it with Carson back in Georgia. I think the first half struggles for Georgia. It may just be what it is. With Tennessee, I mentioned it last week, these inconsistencies. Maybe Nico gets it going, but you know what? They have too many injuries at the wide receiver spot. They can't trust anybody. Chaz Nimrod's not getting it rolling. Again, outside of Brew McCoy, they can't trust anybody. So I think that's something you want to see improve going into this game. For Mississippi State, again, dude, it's just week to week. First year. I do get a little worried, though, for this defense, Coleman Hutzler's defense coming into this matchup in Neyland with this Tennessee run game, because that has, outside the defense, been something that has been very consistent for the Vols all season. And Tennessee is at this point, I think, a little bit maybe where if you just ran the ball pretty well, they would get this win. But if I'm Josh Heupel, want to continue to still build that, I don't know, that foundation between Nico and those wide receivers, who can he trust outside of Brew McCoy? Maybe it becomes one of these tight ends. They start moving into the slot due to an injured Squirrel White at some point. Maybe the Ethan Davis, Holden stays somewhere across the board there. But somebody has to step up as a big-time threat on the outside at the wide receiver tight end spots for them.
Dave, you make a lot of great points. More on that in a second, because there's certainly some things I want to hammer there when we talk about this game. But Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time kickoff on ESPN there in Knoxville, Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. Dave, Tennessee is a 23.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under is 61. We've mentioned this before, Dave, right? When it comes to Mississippi State, just cover the spread, baby. Can you cover the spread? That's it. That's the thing they want to be talking about at Starkville Country Club on Sunday morning. Hey, we covered. Good teams win, great teams cover. Dave, Tennessee leads this series all-time 29-16-1. These two teams haven't met since 2019. The final score in that one, Tennessee won that game 29-10. Dave, as we dive into this matchup, you make a really good point about, because you look at the numbers, and we were talking about this off air. You've seen the chatter kind of grow on social media. Mississippi State, a great fan base. So is Tennessee. But on social media, really active fan base, great fan base. You've seen the chatter grow, Dave, of the locals are growing restless with Coleman Hutzler, the defensive coordinator, right? You and I talked about this before the season. Admittedly, we were skeptical of the decision. Guy was a first-time DC in the SEC. That doesn't – there's a reason you don't see that, like, ever. Coleman Hutzler getting his shot, we were skeptical of it. I think there was some pushback from some Mississippi State fans that were just excited for the season and really just didn't want to hear about it. But I think now you're seeing why we were so concerned. And you mentioned their defense. What jumped out at me, Dave, I was looking at that UMass game, right? State wins that game 45-20. They gave up 200 rushing yards to UMass. What is Dylan Samson going to do? Because this dude, listen, there's been some inconsistencies in college football and certainly with Tennessee, some ups and downs. But the one thing that's been consistent, Dave, Dylan Samson is a dog. And I mean, he is just week after week after week. Guy's got 19 touchdowns right now, which is crazy. You could argue he should be getting more Heisman love, especially if he finishes off. You talk about a Heisman campaign. Let Dylan Samson go run for 250.
Keep running the playoffs. I mean, the guy could be approaching high 20s, 30 maybe, depending on
30 touchdowns. So to your point, Dave, I think from the Tennessee perspective, this is a great opportunity to really get things clicking. I don't feel like Nico's really had that. You mentioned he had a good performance last week, but I don't know that he's had that breakout performance in conference play. And while I understand it's Mississippi State, still, I think if we can see more from him that we saw earlier in the season, some of the flash, some of the big numbers, he goes out there and throws for a couple touchdowns, obviously eclipses, say, 300 yards passing, but he also needs his receivers to step up, Dave. You make a great point. I feel like every single week, speaking of social media, I get on social media and I'm seeing Vol fans post clips of, look at this drop, look at that drop, look at that drop. Like, it's just, and it's so surprising the struggles that receiver room has had, but they just have. So this should be, I mean, Dave, listen, this should be the perfect recipe for Tennessee to have one of their bigger offensive outputs of the season, for Nico to have one of his better games, and certainly for Dylan Samson to run wild, because Mississippi State has not virtually been able to stop anybody this year.
No, I mean, their best probably defensive performance. Whew. I mean, really, I mean, I'm looking at the scale.
Was it the Texas game, maybe?
Yeah, probably was. But again, that was Arch's first start.
Yeah, that was it, and that was against the backup. As good as Arch is.
There's some contextual layers to it as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, you talked a little bit off air. This was a total CAA, Jimmy Sexton hire. You scratch my back, I scratch your back to Jeff Levy. Hey, we got you the Mississippi State job. You're going to hire one of our guys as the defensive coordinator. We don't care if he's a first-time coordinator or not. It just hasn't worked out. I think he makes $1 million a year. I think, do they cut the cord at the end of the year? I mean, I don't know. They still got a couple of games to maybe give him some leg room, but you're playing two pretty good offenses across the board. I know Tennessee has their struggles, but this rushing game for Mississippi State, which they've struggled, this is the best rushing attack they've seen all year. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, if UMass puts up 199, like you said, 200, averaging 4.1 yards per carry, if the Minutemen are doing that, what do you think the Volunteers are going to be doing against you next week with, like you said, one of the more underrated players in college football in Dylan Samson? So you're right. You got to be concerned if you're a Mississippi State fan. If you're Josh Heupel, you got to be not a little, you got to be salivating bright in the mouth to get that run game going. But as you know just as well as I do, we're in the fourth quarter of the season. You have Georgia next week. I would say your playoff lives are on the line. I mean, if you lose to Georgia, you're 10-2. But after the big Alabama win, due to your schedule not being that difficult, you don't have a lot of second wins to hang your hat on. So I think Tennessee's in a little bit more of a 10-2 could get themselves in a little bit of trouble because of what's your second best win, Chris? Probably the game you were at, NC State, which, I mean, NC State's a very average football team this year. So I think they need to keep chipping away. This is a week of practice. This is a game. As much as you could run your way to victory here, you have to get that passing game going, dude, before you go into most likely a night game in Sanford Stadium next week. Now, granted, you get them in a great spot off an Ole Miss road game this next week. Yeah, absolutely. But as we've seen, this offense struggles in loud road environments, the way they communicate with Nico. Again, it's not going to be completely solved, I should say. But, man, let's start seeing some kind of consistency in this passing game. Because if it's a struggle again, let's just say Nico's playing well and receivers are just going 2 extra yards in the route when they're supposed to cut it out, 2 yards short, go 8 instead of 10, and he goes 10 and you throw a ball underneath and maybe it's picked because the corner's sitting there. It's like, yeah, people are going to get on Nico's ass. But at the same time, I think coaches who would tell you, watch the film, yeah, that wasn't on Nico, dude. That guy went further than he was supposed to go in his route. And I think we forget that at times. And that's not on the quarterback, dude. That's on the receiver. That's stuff they're dealing with right now. Not necessarily the interceptions, but stuff like that, dropping a ball from Chris Brazel, like I mentioned earlier. That has to get solved if you want to go get a big boy win potentially next week. Because, again, I think you and me can agree on this, Chris, and Tennessee fans as well, and probably even Mississippi State fans. Nobody's expecting Mississippi State to go win this football game. I think Tennessee's had 3 weeks to kind of get this offensive set after the bye week against Bama, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. If it is still just struggling against Mississippi State offense, it is what it is, and it gives me no confidence in them to go get a win in Sanford Stadium next week.
Dave, we've talked about it before. Momentum is a fickle mistress. It is important. I mean, we've seen it in college football this year. Momentum is a real thing. both positive and negative. To your point, you're Tennessee. You're probably going to win this football game unless something just –
You could run to win a victory.
But to your point, the way you feel going into Georgia, it'll be dictated by how you win. And this is one that, you brought something up. I didn't really even think about going in this game. How important are style points for Tennessee? Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Because, again, if you don't beat Georgia, which, listen, you haven't won in Athens in quite a long time. I mean, if you don't win that game, to your point, you're going to need to beat some people soundly, right? And you mentioned
let's say this too, Chris.
You mentioned the NC State game, Dave. I I don't think NC State's worth a damn. So, I don't really look at that
game.
game.
Tennessee's schedule, who is their second best win?
It probably would have to be that State game. I mean, realistically. So, style points, I think, do matter. I mean, Dave, when it's all said and done, we're jumping way too far ahead. But, beating Vanderbilt might be their second best.
No, if they finish the season 10-2 for sure, Vandy would be the second best.
Yeah. And I think that game is going to be in Nashville. So, anyways, we're getting way too far ahead of ourselves. But for Tennessee on this night, handle your business. Dave, am I crazy for thinking, though, that with State's offense, Michael Van Buren, this passing attack, am I crazy for thinking they can muck this one up and keep it a little bit closer than what we're expecting? Can they cover another spread led by Michael Van Buren in the passing game?
Well, the problem with that one, I think, CP, is, and again, Texas has a better front than people give them credit for. But as you've seen it, they try to run themselves into these games a little bit and keep it low possession, speed up the clock. Hey, again, if we give Tennessee 1,000,000 possession, guys, they're going to beat us. If we go out here and sling the rock around, we'll probably throw an interception. They'll get a short field with a struggling offense. But can you just hand the rock off here to Booth and the boys here and just be like, yeah, we'll just – because Tennessee's run defense is so good that you're
what's crazy about that time of possession stat you bring up, UMass won the time of possession 40-20. They doubled them up in TOP. So
how many passing attempts let's see how many?
Not many. They only threw the ball 25 times, which I feel like for a Levy offense is pretty low. 243 yards rushing against UMass. So
8.4 average. In those games against, Georgia, they had probably their best offensive output. They scored 31 points. But again, I think Tennessee's defense, that front seven in Knoxville at night, you just don't see a bunch of success on the ground, probably through the air either. Michael Van Buren, dude, I'm telling you, if there's not a bigger, I've said it before, you never wish for a kid to get hurt. Blake Shapen, I thought, was playing solid. You never wish for him to get hurt. But, man, if you're Jeff Lebby and them sitting there, if you could somehow steal the Missouri win next week, and you have had Michael Van Buren go into Austin, Athens, Knoxville, and will go to Oxford to end the year. He's his 4 SEC road games in his first.
Baptism by fire.
Dude, that kind of gives you, again, I don't think people surface level will be fired up. But if you're Jeff Lebby offensively, you got to be heading into the spring. I'm just talking spring, not fall 2025, spring 2025. You can go kind of empty the playbook and be like, hey, dude, if we had Blake Shapen all year and we were going through this, look, Van Buren's not real comfortable. He hadn't seen the live reps, live bullets. This kid's played in a lot of tough environments that a lot of college quarterbacks do not have. You feel pretty good going into next year. He's your guy. So, again, not all is bad. Again, this year's a wash for Mississippi State, but I think you just want to continue to build off these good – Mississippi State has not been a complete no-show against these better teams. They didn't play well against Arkansas. It was, whatever, against UMass, go back and watching it. But against the Georgias, the Texases, they haven't played bad. They played probably as good as they possibly could. Again, is it not enough? But like you said, Chris, you brought it up. I brought it before. Perception's reality. Don't go just get the doors blown off you here. That's where people start to lose. Look at our guy Sam Pittman. Had a great win against Tennessee. You get the doors blown off you, not necessarily against LSU, but the game was in full control by LSU. And then Ole Miss comes in and puts a 60 spot on you. Get the eraser out. People start totally forgetting about that Tennessee game. Similar here for Levy. You can't go get blown out in these games when you're only winning 2 games in a season.
So, Dave, that being said, let's go ahead and dive in our predictions for this game. Again, everybody expecting Tennessee to handle their business at home, at night, at Neyland. And I think for good reason. And again, Dave, I didn't even think about it before you mentioned that how important this game is. Hey, right, we're recording this obviously on Monday. We're getting our first college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night. We're going to get an idea of what the committee is weighing or valuing or what have you. To your point, Dave, style points are going to matter. Perception is reality. So I think you look at this game, it's going to be a great opportunity, obviously. I think to your point, Josh Heupel has got to be licking his chops. It's a great opportunity for Tennessee offensively to have one of their best outings of the season, certainly their best outing in conference play. And I think they're going to do that, Dave. Like, I think Dylan Samson's going to run wild. I think Nico, they're going to take shots. And some receivers have got to go make plays. Like, guys have got to go make plays on the outside. I think Tennessee puts it together, has their best outing. I think Mississippi State is actually going to be able to do some things offensively, Dave. I get this weird feeling that, and I'm not saying they're going to go out there and score 30, but I get this weird feeling that Michael Van Buren will be able to hit a couple of shots. To your point, that front seven is going to be relentless, and they're not going to be able to do it consistently. But I think here and there we could see some busts in the secondary, and Mississippi State, hit some long pass plays and make some things happen on that side of the football. But I think all in all, Tennessee's the better team top to bottom. Tennessee is playing for so much more at this point than Mississippi State is, right? State's just trying to cover spreads. Tennessee's trying to cover the spread in regards to making a statement and, building up some flash and building up a lot of positive momentum going into that game against Georgia in Athens next weekend. To your point, Dave, Tennessee's probably going to win this game no matter what, but what's the vibe going into Athens, going into Sanford? Maybe you're catching Georgia coming off a loss and you go out there and score 50, Dave. Well, I mean, it might be misguided confidence, but you're going to have a lot of confidence rolling in. So I like Tennessee to roll here. I think Tennessee actually will cover in this game because, to your point, I didn't really think about it, Dave. It is important, I think, they cover and have style points. Give me Tennessee 45, Mississippi State 17. Again, I think the Vols roll Saturday night in Knoxville.
No, you're right, Chris. Again, I don't think it's going to be a one-score game in the fourth quarter or even the overtime game against Florida like Tennessee had a couple weeks ago and then Kentucky. But you're right. If you're in a fourth-quarter battle against Mississippi State, the committee is going to look back on that back. I understand you beat Alabama, and even that wasn't pretty. But a win's a win against a good team. But you've had 3 struggles at home against Florida, Kentucky, and Mississippi State.
Because even Kentucky was like uninspiring.
Who are all going to have a losing record at the end of the year, right? That's something that, again, you're sitting there at 10-2 facing an 11-1 Indiana. That could get you beat. But like you said, specifically to this game, running game. I think with Dylan Samson, they could run at will. But I was just looking at it, CP. He has 171 carries on the season right now. Kind of feels like they hadn't really built a ton of depth behind him. And I was looking at what Ashton Genty, the Boise State running back that they just kind of force feed. He has 190 carries. Not really that much more than Dylan Samson. I think for you to go make the run you want to make, I said at the beginning of the year, you have to go develop a little bit more depth in that run in that running back room. Maybe this is the game because I think the holes are going to be there. The opportunity is going to be there. Is this the game you potentially kind of go get Deshaun Bishop involved, Khalifa Keith? Do you go get those guys involved to kind of build up maybe Cam Seldon if he's healthy? You go get some of those guys that need to be that number 2 back to help take the load off Dylan Samson because we're playing more games now. We're playing more games across the league. Peyton Lewis, the true freshman, had a touchdown the other night. Like, they need to build up someone. I don't know if you go just give Dylan Samson 18, 20 carries against Mississippi State this week when you got Georgia on deck next week. I think you got to start toning it in. This is that game where I think you could go find that backup because I think they're going to go collect yards as well because I just think Mississippi State's not good up front and their scheme's not great. So in this game, yeah, I see no path to victory for Mississippi State, and that's hard to really say in a lot of these games, especially in a league game, that there's no path to victory. I think Tennessee could rest on their laurels and run to a victory here. But if I'm Josh Heupel, I got to figure out my running back depth. We got to get some continuity going with Nico and his receivers outside of Brew McCoy. I think Mississippi State, I think Tennessee collects a couple of turnovers. I think this game's something like 42-10. I think Tennessee puts up a 40 spot because of the run game. I don't think Nico's going out there and bombs over Baghdad. Maybe he does. But again, what are you going to take from this one? Because it's a bad Tennessee offense. Honestly, it's one of those things, if you aren't doing a lot through the air in this game and it looks like you're really trying to, it's going to be like, woo. But if you do, you're just going to be like, all right, a lot of people have kind of done that against Mississippi State. So I think you just have more to lose in this game offensively. You need to go look good against this whole Mississippi State, almost said Ole Miss, this Mississippi State defense here because it's not a good defense. It's not a good defense. But I think Tennessee gets this 42-10. I trust the running game for Tennessee. I trust the defense. It's a championship-level defense. And I don't think Mississippi State covers here. There's going to be a lot of bourbons being ordered at the old Madison, Mississippi Golf Country Club or Country Club there in Madison for the Mississippi State fans. And maybe, hey, they may be even joined by their Ole Miss fans if they can't get the dub against Georgia on Saturday as well.
And, Dave, I want to make sure I get this right because you mentioned what can you take away because it's a bad offense. I think you meant bad defense from the Mississippi State.
I said bad offense.
I just wanted to make sure we clarify because I don't want Tennessee fans coming at us saying that you said the offense sucks. No, he was talking about Mississippi State's defense. Just trying to save you, Dave. We love our Tennessee folks, but I'm just trying to save you there. Anyways, guys, do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this thing playing out when Tennessee and Mississippi State do battle Saturday night in Knoxville? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, guys, I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.